Advocates of the group Mainers for Tax Fairness speaking in Augusta today in favor of certain changes to the governor's proposed supplemental budget. They say 3 specific bills that have been discussed within the legislature would add revenue to the state and would help with issues like housing, food insecurity, and health care. The bills look to add taxes to those making over $1 million, make changes to the state's corporate income tax, and adjust tax brackets and rates. The group also voiced concerns with federal changes being made, including what they claim are harmful cuts in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Tens of thousands of Mainers stand to lose help buying groceries, seeing a doctor, or keeping a roof over their heads. This is unconscionable, and Maine should not repeat those mistakes. Governor Mills's supplemental budget recognizes that we are in a crisis. But recognition is not enough, and with thousands of Mainers unable to afford health insurance, critical care centers struggling with wait lists and staffing shortages, and nursing homes and rural health providers closing their doors, we need more than just one-time checks. We need long-term solutions for long-term problems.
Today's gathering aligns with ongoing public hearings in the Appropriations Committee on the supplemental budget.